Before the start of the Civil War, both the North and the South were already greatly divided. With the rise of industrialism in the North and the South's agricultural dependence, both groups' differences were becoming apparent. Add their differing views on slavery and the division becomes wider. Northerners wanted to limit the expansion of slavery, and others wanted to abolish it. On the other hand, Southerners wanted to maintain and expand slavery. Naturally, when Republican candidate Abraham Lincoln, with Northern views, won the 1860 election, the Southern states were outraged. The following year, 11 Southern states seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. The Northern Unionists didn't approve of the Southern states' secession. They claimed that the secession was unconstitutional and threatened to use force to keep the Confederate States a part of the Union. They kept good on their threat, which resulted in an expensive and bloody civil war, as well as the death of 620,000 American soldiers. 4 years later, the war ended and the Union was restored. The 13th Amendment was the first step taken to end slavery. It stated that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. After the amendment was passed by Congress and ratified by the states in 1865, African Americans were under the impression that they had won freedom and equality. Quite to the contrary, they were met with hate and discrimination as they tried to work their way up the social ladder. The newly freed slaves were faced with black codes, laws that belittled the rights of African Americans and made them subject to the white legislature of the South. Black codes called for the arrest of African Americans who were unemployed, while also making it challenging for them to find employment. They were required to have license for skilled work, and there were set numbers on the amount of hours a person could work to be considered employed. Despite these codes, the passing of the 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, forbids states from denying any person life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and forbid them to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, was a step forward no matter how small. Even with the passing of the 14th Amendment, African Americans were victims of Jim Crow laws that limited their rights. African American activist Booker T. Washington suggested that his people could earn respect by working hard to prove they were equally important in society. However, Washington couldn't have prognosticated the outcome of the Plessy v. Ferguson case, which changed the course that the Union wanted for African Americans. The specifics of the Plessy v. Ferguson case, according to Richard Wormser and Pearson Education Incorporated, are as follows. Homer Adolph Plessy was arrested and charged for sitting in the white car of the East Louisiana Railroad. Although he could easily pass for white, he was still considered an African American under Louisiana law because of his African American descent. Plessy deliberately sat in the white section and identified himself as black to challenge the recently passed Louisiana Separate Car Act, making it legal to separate common carriers. Plessy's lawyer argued that the Louisiana Separate Car Act was unconstitutional under the 13th and 14th Amendments. Plessy petitioned the Louisiana Supreme Court for a writ against Ferguson to stop the proceedings against him. He was refused by the state Supreme Court, therefore he appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States. Despite his last plea for justice, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Louisiana segregation statute in a 7-1 vote. Speaking for the majority, Justice Henry Brown wrote, "A statute which implies merely a legal distinction between the white and colored races has no tendency to destroy the legal equality of the two races. The object of the 14th Amendment was to undoubtedly enforce the absolute equality of the two races before the law, but in the nature of things it could not have been intended to abolish distinctions based upon color or to enforce social as distinguished from political equality or a commingling of the two races upon terms satisfactory to either."
The Plessy v. Ferguson decision was a major turning point in American history because it became the basis of the belief of the separate but equal doctrine, which covered many public areas of society, such as public services, restaurants, transportation, and education. This doctrine stated that segregation was constitutional in society as long as the facilities in which it is carried out are equal. Unfortunately, this decision created a barrier between blacks and the whites, and blacks were forced to socialize and dwell, and eliminated the hope of achieving their civil rights that they rightfully deserved as citizens of the United States of America. Because the U.S. Supreme Court approved the Louisiana Railroad segregation law as constitutional, it impacted American society, in which white supremacist governments would justify sentencing African Americans to second-class citizenship. This is proven through their acts of segregation, putting up restrictive signs separating the blacks from the whites, sending out the message that African Americans should stay in their place. The illegitimate excuse was argued that social class wasn't a category that legislation can get involved in. Justice Henry B. Brown clearly argued that legislation is powerless to eradicate racial instincts or to abolish distinctions based on physical appearance. This meant that if one ethnic group is classified as the lesser of another, then the Supreme Court could not intervene and make them socially equal. Unfortunately, this created a major setback in an African American struggle for their equal rights and would be a setback for the next 60 years.